it's notable, in as we consider this moment, I just think it is going to be so evocative to see the Queen's coffin emerge from Balmoral and make its way to Edinburgh. I think for all of us in our own lives, we can relate to that image when you lose a loved one, that actually that is perhaps the moment that there's a reality check. There's something so visceral about the perception, the image of a coffin, and all that signifies. And this, of course, will be, in some ways, I guess, our first encounter with the Queen since her death on Thursday. And while we have seen the seamless transition of power and transition of the monarchy to King Charles, actually this is the first encounter that we will have with the Queen today. And I think that's what makes this moment so significant, actually, as the Queen begins her final journey.
And when you consider the fondness the Queen has always had for Scotland, the fact that so many commentators said to us that for her to spend her final days in Balmoral would have meant so much to her, it means that people in Scotland will be able to pay their respects in a way that if she had passed away at Windsor Castle, they wouldn't have had that opportunity to line the streets, to see her coffin, and to be able to get the opportunity to not only be a part of this historic moment, but pay their respects to a woman who has deep affection for their area and for their country.
Absolutely. And isn't there something so fitting, really, that this place, Balmoral Castle, which the Queen held so dear and loved so dearly, that this place where she came for recuperation and retreat and relaxation is the place where she ultimately passed to eternal rest as well. And all that leads to, by way of ceremony, tributes and procedure in various parts of Scotland as well. She was so aware on her coronation day that it was by God's grace and mercy that years would be given to her to reign and serve as Queen. He saw fit to give her more than 70 years in dedicated service of our country and indeed nations around the world. And here we are, standing by for thousands of people to have the opportunity to pay their tribute as well. Those armed police officers, perhaps significantly, have just stepped away now from the open gates of Balmoral, taking steps back into the grounds of Balmoral. So we anticipate movement in the next few minutes. Of course, 10 o'clock was the estimated time for the departure of the Queen's coffin to get underway, and it feels like something is about to happen now as those officers stand aside. The cortege will pass by many, many bouquets and bunches of flowers that have been laid by people in this local community, which feel such a close connection to the Queen, always have done, because of the time that she has spent at Balmoral over summer upon summer. And over this weekend on Times Radio, we've brought you those stories of personal connection, those encounters with the Queen, whether they be joy-filled at ceilidh dances, whether they be more significant in by way of attending church services. People in this area knew the Queen, they knew her well, they knew her like a friend, and they have such a personal connection to what is about to happen here as well. At the other end of the Balmoral Bridge then wait the first onlookers, I suppose, the first of many thousands that the funeral cortege will pass by today as they paid their respects to Her Majesty the Queen. She said after her coronation, Her Majesty the Queen, that the ceremonies of that day were ancient and their origins veiled in the mists of the past, but their spirit and meaning shine through the ages, is what Queen Elizabeth said. And surely Queen Elizabeth II's spirit and meaning have been shining all of this weekend at Balmoral, through the faces of those people at the other end of the Balmoral Bridge, just 100 or so metres away from me, who live round here, and the stories that they have recounted to us on air with delight, to have encountered someone who became so dear to them and so dear to this part of the world. Her legacy will never be clouded in the mist of the past. It's too bold, it's too distinctive, and it is too honourable for that. We stand by for the departure then of the coffin of Her Majesty the Queen. Adam Bolton and Kate McCann are in the studio in London. Good morning to both of you. I feel like this is such a pivotal moment in events, for obvious reasons, but also because of that just evocative moment that we're all about to experience of seeing the Queen's coffin.
Yes, indeed, Callum, and I imagine there will have been a formal saying of goodbye as the coffin left Balmoral as the Queen's left Balmoral for the last time with the staff and the people who know her so well.
I should just say I can see vehicle headlights approaching down the driveway towards the open gates of Balmoral now. Headlights on what is a cortege of vehicles approaching. A police outrider motorbike to my right has started its engine. And here comes the procession now, carrying the Queen's coffin towards the open gates of Balmoral. There are about 6 black cars all in a line. The first of which is now approaching the open gates at Balmoral in the autumnal sunshine in Aberdeenshire. Driving very slowly, the hearse is at the front. We can see the Queen's coffin, which is draped in the Royal Standard of Scotland with a wreath of flowers on top. Driving past the floral tributes now, this cortege makes its way past. And what a sight as the Queen's coffin rolls by ever so slowly, with the Royal Standard of Scotland draped over the coffin and that wreath of flowers. It approaches the Balmoral Bridge, and at the other side of that bridge are the local people, the onlookers, the well-wishers, who are standing by to say farewell to one of their own as the Queen's final journey from here begins. The hearse at the front of this cortege now approaching that first group of onlookers. I wonder how they must be feeling. She was so vital in this part of the world, so vital in church congregations, in community settings, at events here, summer after summer, year after year. Queen Elizabeth II and the coffin carrying her, going past those onlookers now, and heading towards the main road, about 200 metres from where I'm speaking to you from. It will turn right onto the main road, heading towards Edinburgh, eventually passing through many of the towns in this area, including Ballater, perhaps best known. It's so close to Balmoral, of course. We've already been made aware that there are hundreds of people on the streets in Ballater, ready to see this cortege pass by. It has now approached the main road, and the vehicles are turning onto the main road with those police outriders to guide them through the 6-hour journey towards Edinburgh and the Palace of Holyrood House. There are a few places, a few towns that the cortege will pass through today. Many hundreds and thousands of people will be out on the streets to say farewell. And so the Queen has begun her final journey to be buried at Windsor Castle, eventually, following her funeral, which is a week tomorrow. Today, then, is her final goodbye, really, to the place dearest to her heart, the place where she could be at her most relaxed and where, even if momentarily, she could lay down that burden of holding the realm together in this 50,000-acre estate in Aberdeenshire. And this, then, the final goodbye from a community who saw her as one of their own. Queen Elizabeth II requested that people around the world would pray for her on the day of her coronation, to pray that God would give her wisdom and strength to carry out the promises that she went on to make. Well done, then, good and faithful servant. Enter thou into the joy of thy Lord.
Callum, thank you very much for that. And there'll be more from Scotland throughout the day here on Times Radio.